Well, some people say that coast-to-coast athletes are crazy. I've always admired their dedication, the amount of training that must go into it. They're definitely built different. And there's been some amazing feats of some of our lesser-known world-class athletes. It's nothing short of mind-blowing. And one of those people, he is a multi-sport athlete and coach, Sam Manson. The former Hawke's Bay lad joins us now to talk about competing in and winning. Yes, he won the latest edition of the Coast to Coast race in his 11th attempt with a time of 11 hours, 40 minutes and 15 seconds, entering an elite class, including the likes of Steve Gurney, Richard Usher and Braden Curry. Sam, welcome into the show.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, good to chat. I haven't chatted to too many people in a couple of days. A lot of messages on the phone, but otherwise I've been hiding away trying to get some sleep.
Wake up, Sam. Yeah. The big question is, what happened in your childhood to make you choose this crazy sport?
I don't know. I don't think my childhood really sort of represented multisport and endurance racing, but I was brought up in small town Wairoa. Parents on a lifestyle block. It was a nice place to be. Eventually ended up at boarding school in Napier, and even there though in boarding school I didn't do a hell of a lot of sport. Eventually got into just the basics, a bit of hockey.
Yeah.
But I wasn't very good at it. And then maybe a little bit of orienteering because that was kind of fun with some mates. Eventually got into whitewater kayaking, which honestly was probably a big step forward in preparing me for multisport, because whitewater kayaking, or the kayaking stage of the coast to coast, is the most technical part, or one of the most technical parts of it, and often what other people struggle with, especially if you're new to it. So that set me up super well. And when I got to the last year of high school, that's when I just sort of heard about this race and heard about adventure racing and was very interested in it. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess just the same reason anyone else is interested in it. Just the cool aspect of this off-road racing and beautiful South Island, Southern Alps, and just finding a way to train yourself and to be able to get over this course and prove to yourself that you can do it and get over this incredibly long distance on such a challenging course. But I also just straight away wanted to win it, and I can't really explain why, but maybe it was just wanting to see if I could as well, and wanting to be like people like Uni and Richard Usher, who were the sort of people I was looking up to at the time and were at their prime.
A lot of people say there's that saying, third time lucky. You're 11th time lucky. How did you stay dedicated enough and push on 11 attempts and you got the win? Why did it happen this time?
Yeah. Well, it's not quite right. It was the ninth time. So it's quite funny. All the headlines have been saying 11. I'm not sure where that rumour came, but it's not far off. It's pretty much the same, isn't it? 9 or 11.
That's a lot.
It's too many times. Yeah, I always said I was one and done. So my first one was in 2013, and I came into that race after 3 years of training towards it, and was hoping to win. And I was pretty young. I was 21 years old, but I just had the mindset of wanting to win, and I hadn't raced anyone there before, really, or not really, and I hadn't really had a chance to compare myself against any of them. So it was very, in some ways, naive, because I didn't really realise, or maybe even ignorant, I didn't realise that I was actually that much slower than everyone. But I still managed to get ninth, and that was incredible. But I was disappointed still, and mate, I wanted to win, and I want to stand by that goal. And if I set a goal, I guess I'd like to say that I want to keep going for that goal until I've achieved it. And sometimes it's important to be able to know your limits and stop at some point when you think you've come far enough. But I watch other people do that, who would come in the top 10 or the top 5 over the last few years, and they stop eventually because they've tried so many times. And I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the guy that actually got there, and so just keep coming back, and it's a wonderful sport. It's something that's created a lot of opportunities along the way, just becoming this fit and strong at those particular disciplines. It opened doors to adventure racing overseas, and that just helped build the foundation of being able to maintain and the sport and sustain it, maybe a tiny bit financially, maybe a little bit of prize money, but mostly just because it's so enjoyable, the crowd, the people, the culture of it.
The cool thing is most sports are played in a stadium, quite manufactured. Your stadium is out in the wilderness, which is fantastic. And I wanted to ask you about your training regime, prepping for something like the coast to coast. Like, you can go out on the road and ride a bike, you can run on the road and run, that sort of thing. But how do you train for running up, is it Goat Pass and on boulders and things like? And I ask that question because we had Mike Dawson in studio a couple of weeks ago, who just conquered the South Pole, and he said he used to go running through the Waitakaris with a tractor tyre tied behind him to mimic the sled that he'd have to pull in the South Pole. So, do you have to get funky with your training regimes? How do you do it?
Oh, man, I guess I have been pretty funky, I guess, at times. I did my first couple of races when I was living in Auckland. I had a job in Auckland for about 4 years, and that actually, it's quite different to Goat Pass, to the Southern Alps. But you make it work with it wherever you are, and of course try to come down the course and actually see what the course is specifically like. But Auckland had a few things to go. Like Mike mentioned, the Waitakere range actually is a pretty tough range and some good trails in there. And if you get in the streams, which I think you're not so much allowed to go into anymore because of the Cody dieback, but there's rocks. You just got to find rocks. There's rocks in the race, so you got to go find rocks and spend some time in there and just go find them. And I used to run the North Shore rocks between the beaches. There's plenty of slippery rocks around there. Rangitoto Island, there's rocks around there, and most towns, they've got rocks, so you just got to go find them, spend some time on them. And then, there's plenty of awesome trail running events in New Zealand, so I just clocked all those up, entered every running race on the calendar for a while just to experience different types of trails and in an enjoyable way, though, around other people. And then eventually you just start getting up the Topo 50 map and just following some trails in the bushes and just go exploring. That's the kind of cool thing about the sport, is you get to see some pretty awesome places in your training. You don't have to go to the same place every time. You can go explore new places and see some pretty cool things in New Zealand.
Just over 11 and a half hours in the saddle, in the kayak, on your feet. What's the mental side of the race like? Do you have moments during the race where you're just buried in your thoughts and you have to change your thought patterns to stay on top of things?
Always. Yeah, always adjusting things, man. That's fortunate for me, is because I've done it so many times, not just coast to coast, but also many other endurance events now. You've seen it all. Things have gone wrong so many times. By wrong, I guess not necessarily to the ideal plan, whether it's a mechanical or whether that's physically how you're feeling, whether you trip and hurt yourself or drop something, like it might drop some food that's actually really important to maintaining, nutritional stability. So yeah, it's all happened, and so you're prepared for all those situations to a certain extent. And even if I have a situation that I'm not prepared for, then you find a way just to calm yourself down, clear the head, and figure out a solution. So that's thanks to experience, and some people get that from the get-go, but I think it's definitely more common to build that over the years. So, no, I mean, I knew that I came to the race. I knew that I was going to be behind in the early stages, because I knew those guys are a lot faster over Goat Pass. I didn't have a great training block. You always have dreamed your training block and you plan it well, but even your training to the race doesn't necessarily go very smooth. And so I came to the race thinking a bit worried, I'm not going to be as quick. I told my crew I'd probably be, about 5th place over the run. Not to worry about it, because my plan was to look after myself, not push too hard, eat heaps of food, and to send it in the second half of the race. And thankfully that's exactly what happened. And so for me, my race plan actually was executed really well, and I didn't have too many issues during the day. So I knew that I was going to be a bit slow at the start and then pull it through at the end. I didn't know for sure when I got on that last bike ride whether the legs were going to be there. Quite often you get to that part of the race. So the race finishes with a 70k bike ride across the Canary Plains. And normally that's where the race can be won and lost, because it is a long stage. It's 70 kilometres, generally it is completely flat, but generally into a headwind. And so that's where it can be really mentally tough. And often you get in there and you might have gone a little bit fast during the day, or maybe too fast, and your legs are just fried. But I hopped on the bike, and actually my legs, for whatever reason, were feeling really good. They were feeling great. And so I actually finished quite strong, which was hard to do in a race that long.
Out there competing, do you competitors lean on each other for support during the race, or is it dog eat dog out there?
I like to lean off each other, just because I know them all, pretty much all of them, and especially if the guys I've trained with and I know them well, and they're good blokes. So I want everyone to do well. The only person I might not enjoy being around is someone who might have bothered me before the race, or maybe not done their fair share on the bunch ride.
Yeah.
That first stage. But other than that, we had a few guys come over from Australia, Alex and Robbie and Tim Boot, and it was awesome to have them back because we haven't had any Aussies for a while, or overseas competitors. And genuinely want them to do well. You want to see what these guys can do. You want these guys to push the pace and to push the boundaries of of multisport and improving the sport. So I might offer a tiny bit of advice or a bit of banter along the way, because it's a long day. You don't want to just be quiet the whole time, and even though someone's around you, so you chat here and there. But if they want to send it and do their own thing, then that's on them. But we'll chat a little bit.
It's a really physically demanding sport. Now, while you're not getting smashed like rugby and rugby league players, you certainly put your body through the mill. Are you ever 100% fit without niggles?
No way, man. Yeah, I've got plenty of bruises today. Yeah, that goat path is tough. I don't think it's possible to get over that pass without covered in bruises and cuts. The rocks, just because there's so many rocks, and you are aiming to stand on a rock quite accurately each time, but you're doing thousands of steps, and it's easy to make a mistake, especially when you're crossing a river. So you smash your ankles to pieces, or you might slip over and smash your shins and your knee.
Can you actually describe? Can you describe Goat Pass? Because most of us will never go there, and you see pictures of it, but I feel like through the TV lens we don't understand the aggressive nature of Goat Pass. And I'm watching these people, you're using both feet, both hands, knees, it looks nuts. Can you paint a picture for us as you approach Goat Pass and what it's like to go over it as an athlete?
Well, the best way is you just got to get in there. Anyone can go there. Honestly, it's not that hard a place to get to. I mean, you want to be prepared for the conditions and the weather and all that stuff. But it's rocks. You're on a riverbed. It's Southern Alps. Off the hills there, you've got a lot of creeks dumping a lot of water and bringing down a lot of rocks off the mountains. And so this river, you go up a riverbed. And you're going up this riverbed for 15, 16 kilometres. But the further you get up the riverbed, the bigger the rocks get, because that's just the way they are. The further they roll down the hill, the smaller they crumble. And if there's been recent flooding, then every rock there is just loosed and stacked up. So if there hasn't been rain for a while, you might get lucky, and the amount of trampers and just time essentially does settle the rocks and make it ever so slightly easier to walk and run over them. But because the way the river works, it winds, doesn't it? It goes left and right. It's S-bends everywhere. So if you're trying to get a fast time, it's often more efficient to just try and hold a nice straight line through there, which means crossing the river at every S-bend to save time, and often to get under bluffs. So you're crossing the river. I think there's over 20 crossings. And if the river's high, they can be quite deep and quite swift, and you can't really see your footsteps in those sections, so you've got to be quite careful. But on race day, probably running at full speed into the river, and you're just jumping and hoping that your foot lands somewhere that isn't going to break your ankle. But you'd be surprised if you've done it enough times now. It actually works out relatively well. I haven't actually broken an ankle yet. How long from when you enter Goat Pass to getting out the other end of it? How long? Because that must be incredible concentration, as you say, trying to land every single one of those thousands of steps to flush on a rock, or don't know where it's landing. How long are you in that state of physical and mental full-on concentration in Goat Pass? Oh, the whole way. Yeah, the whole way. Well, I guess not necessarily the whole way, because I have lapse concentration, and that's where I trip and fall. So if you better be concentrating the whole way. If you're not, you should probably stop and have a breather and have a rest, because if you're not thinking and concentrating the whole way, you'll catch your toe on a rock, and that's when you trip and fall, and it does hurt. So yeah, the whole way, every step is technical. There's a couple of sections of boardwalk, I suppose, but even that, I guess you could trip and fall on. So no, you want to be on your A game the whole way. It's so I do guided trips for top sport, and so our slightly slower guided trips, we're looking at getting to Goat Pass, which is around 16, 17 k's into the stage, the high point. Obviously, that takes about 4 hours to get to. On race day, it takes me just under 2 hours, so about an hour 50. And then from Goat Pass, you're going over the Alps, over the Southern Alps to the other side, and you're going down a new riverbed all the way to a place called Klondike, which is where the stage finishes. And of course, that follows a river as well as a bush track, and and that section takes another 2 hours. Or I guess if you're going fast, then you can do it in about an hour. It's just over an hour, but you've got to be really centered in it. And of course, downhill comes with a few consequences as well.
How long's the recovery? Like, do you feed up, or do you have active recovery? What does this week look like for you?
Oh, definitely haven't done anything for a few days, and sometimes I've taken a couple of weeks off. I'm not sure if it's the high from the wind, but I don't feel like having too long a break. I'm actually quite keen to get out there again. I obviously enjoy what I do. I enjoy going for runs. I enjoy going for a bike, especially when you're fit. So, no, I'll get out and do the odd fun bike ride and fun jog and pedal. Maybe tomorrow might be my first bike session. I might just go for I wouldn't call it a session. I might just go for a cruising mountain bike in the hills with a friend. Have a coffee at the end, all that normal cool stuff that cyclists do.
Walk into cafes with your cleated shoes and your lycra. Love you guys.
No, I mean I don't do that. I mean the thing is that sort of culture of cycling. It's cool. I don't do it a lot, but you don't really understand it until you're actually in it. So. Yeah, you can't judge this sort of thing. I enjoy all my sports. Cycling is one of the hardest ones to enjoy because of all the roads and the cars, and obviously I'm very much a car driver as much as a cyclist. And it's a sport you really don't understand until you do it. And it is awesome. It's just it is a little bit scary out there on the road.
Hey Sam, massive congratulations. I just tipped my hat. 9 cracks you got there, and I can just hear the delight and the satisfaction in your voice. Once again, massive congratulations. It's an incredible race, and we wish you well in the future. Enjoy your bike ride tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I'm over the moon. I'm super happy to finally get there, mate. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Sam Manson, he is the elite men's champion. 11 hours, 40 minutes and 15 seconds. So if there's anything you get out of that, it took him 9 years to get that top of the podium. Never quit, never give up. What an inspiration he is. Sam Manson, your coast-to-coast champion.